Science seminar, lunch seminar. My name is Paul Wong. I'm the coordinator of the Bachelor of Social Science program. Before we talk about this FBI hostage negotiation seminar, I wish to invite Dr. Chung to come and speak to us. He is going to offer a really amazing course about survey and information collection and information analysis and how to make use of information to address to the policy. So I will pass the mic to him first, and then we'll get Dr. Strentz to come and talk about the negotiation. So, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wong. Actually, I'm stealing some time from our main guest today to very briefly introduce you what will be offered to you and other students in the second semester and also next year. Actually, I would like to say, when I know that I had this opportunity to really come to this seminar, I was really impressed because when I was a young kid, I watched TV. And we have the FBI series, and I was really a very faithful audience of that. So today, when I see that I'll be being an FBI agent, I feel really excited. And I think those of you who are here, and maybe someone's coming, if you are coming to this seminar, obviously you should be an inquisitive person, isn't it? Because all these professions are really going into studying different problems and helping people. And of course, most of you will be taking social work courses, so it's a really good blend of everything. And I will have to tell you that the course that I will be teaching in the second semester, we have enough students for that way, right? If you have enough students, we'll be opening a course this semester on social policy and public opinion. That is sort of a special arrangement, a special topic. It wasn't put exactly in the original curriculum offered to you at the beginning of this year, because the course title, the original course title, well, that is a special topic in policy study. So it's a special topic in policy study without telling you what is a special topic. And today I'm telling you that the special topic is public opinion and social policy. And this course will actually be offered next year as well. Probably, second semester of the next year. But for the coming semester, we like to have a quick start, because the issue of public inquiry, public opinion, and of course scientific survey is very important. And I myself am already teaching a course in political science this semester on politics and public opinion. So we like to extend this sharing of our knowledge and of course our data with students like you as soon as possible. So I think what I have to say in the next couple of minutes is that you have the leaflet with you. So in this leaflet, there's some very rough explanation on what you'll be shared if you take this course. I think I will leave the nitty-gritties, but I think a couple of important features of this course should be told to you right at the beginning. There will be no examinations.
That's good.
Technically speaking, there is still an examination, and put it that way. The course for the next semester, for the next year course, will be entirely, assessment will be different, because I have written in the course proposal that there will not be any examination in the next year's course. But for the next semester, because it's already subsumed under the special topic, so there will still be a 40-60 division between coursework and examination. So technically, 60% of the assessment will be examinations. But I will make sure that examination will be take-home examination. Okay, so it's still an examination, but it will be project-based. It will be tested on your knowledge, how to read the data, how to run things. That would be a take-home examination. So technically, it's examination. I would say it's not examination. Because for the courses that I've been teaching, and I'm teaching right one now and next semester, I really hope to share experience with you in the area of social research, very frontline research, like frontline negotiations. So there are a lot of frontline experiences, and we do have a lot of data. I've been working in this university as a researcher for 22 odd years now, and we have accumulated over almost 1,500 data sets. And we'd like to use those data sets for teaching purposes. So if you would join this course, we'll be offering some data sets for you to play around with and make inquiry on. Some are very recent data, so you might be able to make an inquiry. So it will be very experiential learning type. It will be project-based. We will try to share all sorts of experience to you, empirical data, of course, related to social policy and public opinion. So I think I shouldn't go on and on. Tonight is really FBI topic sharing. So thank you very much. Hope to see you in the class, or your friends in the class. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so now we turn back to the FBI. Before I introduce Tom to you first, I would like to introduce this important person. A friend of mine, he's operating commander of the Hong Kong Police Negotiation Color, and Dr. Gilbert Wong. He's a hypnotherapist as well. He's a district commander of Hong as well. So he's a very good friend of mine. And Gilbert will supplement some of the local situations for this talk. And now, Dr. Tom Strentz, I met Tom a few days ago through Gilbert, and he's a former FBI agent. He has been working for a long time, and I guess you know why you're here, so I don't want to spend too much time on Tom. So Tom, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I guess I'm on. I don't have to yell. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Very quickly, this is my second trip to Hong Kong. The first one was before any of you were born, well, before most of you were born. It was about 25 years ago. A little bit on my background, so that you have some understanding of my orientation. I know that I speak American and you speak English. So this can be a problem. I will avoid slang and I will speak slowly. And I know there are also cultural differences. In America, we're always raising our hand, asking questions. I understand that's not common here, but I will not be offended. Now, Dr. Wong might be offended, but I won't be offended. So I'd like to keep this as informal as possible. I'm 76 years old, and so I've had a lot of experience. And just to kind of go over a little bit of my background, so you have an understanding of my orientation. My parents, I chose my parents very carefully. They grew up during the Depression. My father only went to the 8th grade. My mother had 1 year of high school. But they understood the value of education. I have one sibling, my brother, who has his doctorate in journalism, and I have mine in social work. So they were very, very effective in making it clear how valuable an education is. Now, the reason for this listing of the Marine Corps College and welfare and what have you is, yes, it's my background, but it's also typical of what was happening in the United States at the time. Back in the 50s, we had a requirement of universal military service. Everybody, every male, it's changed now, but in those days, every male had to serve in the Army, Navy, Air Force, or in my case, the Marine Corps. And quite frankly, I found that very useful, because during World War II, all of my uncles and my dad had served in the military, and quite frankly, the first time I took my physical for the military, I was so excited that my blood pressure was too high. And the nurse, thank God, I was on the verge of tears. Oh my God, I'm going to be 4F. I can't be in the Marine Corps. She sat me down and she talked and calmed me down. And they took my blood pressure again, and it was normal. So, thank God. But while in the Marine Corps, the value of an education was reinforced, because I saw very clearly the difference between officers and enlisted. The enlisted man's club was a very small Quonset hut. Is that? It's a tin building with a curved roof. The officers' club, it was pretty fancy, and there were other things. But in addition, many of my senior NCOs would say constantly, if I had gone to college, I would have done this. If I had gone to college, I would have done that. So I said to myself early on, when I get to be their age, I'm not going to be saying, if I had gone to college, it's going to be because I went to college. After I finished college, I went to work for the welfare department. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I took some tests, vocational placement tests, and they said, well, really good news. You would make a good social worker, and the welfare department has openings. So, all right, I went to the welfare department. I worked initially in what we call aid to families with dependent children, because there was the old age program, there was the disabled program, and then the children's program, and that's the one in which I worked. I also worked in child welfare, and the child welfare were mostly cases where the courts had removed children from their parents because of abuse. And so it was, you have the same sort of thing here? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. So I had a lot of interaction with the courts and with law enforcement. And then in those days, in California, I could go to graduate school and get my MSW, but because the welfare department didn't pay as much as the better jobs, I had to go back to the welfare department for 2 years. And unfortunately, during those 2 years, Reagan became governor of California. Jobs in mental health began disappearing. And at the same time, law enforcement, because of the Civil Rights Act, was looking for people. My neighbor was a police officer. We had some burglaries in the neighborhood, and I helped him stake out, stake out some houses. We caught the burglars, and the joy that brought to the victims, really made me feel good. So my wife, I was married at the time. We were expecting our daughter, which meant my wife would have to stop working. And I wasn't making that much money. I was making $360 a month. Now, gas was 25 cents a gallon, so you have to do the math on that. But my neighbor who, where, am I standing in the wrong place? Okay. My neighbor told me that the FBI was looking for special agents. And so I contacted the FBI, and I found out that if I joined the FBI, I would earn more money than my wife and I were making together. So it seemed like a good deal to me, and I had seen the FBI on TV. It looked pretty impressive. So I joined the FBI, was trained at Quantico, and then went to work in the state of Texas. Now, just to put things in perspective, the FBI is a federal detective agency. We have, in the United States, 50,000 police departments. It's insane, okay? It's absolutely insane. When I was in Texas, I covered 9 counties. Federal violation would occur in Old Dime Box, Texas, which is in Washington County. I drive out, and I would check in with local law enforcement, and it happened in Old Dime Box. Local law enforcement was a farmer who was a part-time police officer. So I would go to his farm and introduce myself to his wife. She'd go out on the porch and ring this bell, and he would come in from wherever he was. And sometimes it would just be a courtesy call to tell him I would be working in his town because he was in charge of his town. And so anyhow, but other times, I would need some help. And when I needed help, he'd get off the tractor, put on his badge, put on his gun, and now he was the chief of police. And that's insane. But even today, in the states of Louisiana and Mississippi, when you join the police department, you have to go through a basic academy within your first 5 years on the job. But you can get 4 extensions. So you can be armed and dangerous. That was a joke. You can be a law enforcement officer in those states for 20 years, never having gone through an academy. Again, it's crazy. But Americans have this concern about local control for law enforcement, and it's a program we're stuck with, and I don't think we'll ever be able to change it. There are more similarities between law enforcement and social work than I thought existed. Because basically I was dealing with the same kinds of people, but the kinds of people I encountered in social work who were having problems, it was generally a problem caused by somebody else. In law enforcement, it was because this guy had robbed a bank or violated the law, but it was still basically people in crisis. And that's where active listening skills became incredibly important. Now, you're all familiar with active listening skills. It's amazing how many American police officers do not use active listening skills. Because to me, they are so easy. And then you look at, God gave us one mouth we can close and 2 ears we cannot. And I think that's a message about what's important. But even with that, the police officers, God bless them, But there are customers saying, you stand up, you sit down, you shut up, you come over here. They're telling people what to do. But people in crisis have a story to tell. And I'll get into more detail in a moment on that. Now, I'm not going to go through all these in any detail because you're familiar with them. Typically, I use just a few active listening skills. The first one is keeping my mouth shut so the person can tell their story. And research in the United States has shown, research by the RAND Corporation, that the average American can tolerate 7 seconds of silence before he or she feels compelled to say something. So I began practicing on my kids, keeping my mouth shut for 7, 8, 9, 10. I got pretty good at it after a while.
It's what's the shortest one then?
Pardon me?
What's the shortest patience span for silence? Like which country has it and which country has the longest?
Well, I wish I could answer that question. The question is which country, has the shortest, which has the longest. I don't know of any research on that. I do know about what the RAND Corporation did on Americans. And and some people break the silence just by, coughing or something of that sort. But if you practice that, you get good at it. Because again and again, people in crisis, whether it's a social work issue or somebody who's taken hostages, they are in crisis. So I use silence, paraphrasing, and by all means, open-ended questions. And I'll never forget one of the first interviews I conducted at the welfare department. I said to this woman who was barely fluent in English, I said, do you want to stay home and take care of your children, or do you think you could serve them more effectively by going to work? And she said, no, I cannot serve them more effectively by going to work. I said, oh, that sounds familiar. I wonder who said that. So, I learned to keep my mouth shut. At least I tried to. The other thing that became clear to me is in law enforcement, you've got to have sources of information. And too many people call this source a snitch. Now, does that snitch translate into English, or is it an American?
It's more American.
It's a negative. It's kind of like saying he's a rat.
You mean like those? You mean people who eventually backstab you or something
No,
like that?
okay, I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, because most informants, at least in my experience, are people who have antisocial personalities.
Introverted?
Oh no, they're very gregarious. They're the repeat offender. They're the person who, when you meet the first time, we say comes on strong, acts as if they've known you all of your life. Their whole orientation is, what's in it for me? These are our serial offenders. Now, by serial offender, I mean repeat offenders. Their whole life is robbery or, in some cases, rape, murder, whatever it happens to be. But they are also very good informants because we pay them for giving us information on, quote, their friends. Now, in fact, they don't have any friends because it's all about what's in it for themselves. But in spite of that, you treat them with some sense of dignity and you get more information from them. And I mean, not all of them are antisocial. I had a particularly good informant who happened to be a waitress in a restaurant where the kinds of people I was going after tended to congregate. And so she was giving me information about, because they kept asking her out on dates. And so I gave her money to buy, it's not my money, it was the FBI money. It was to buy nice clothes and go out on these dates and then get the information. And every once in a while she'd get in trouble. Her name was Mousy. It was a nickname. A very attractive young lady, but what we would say is a real handful. Trying to control Mousy was trying to herd cats. Does that translate?
Yeah.
Can you imagine herding cats?
There's no way.
It can't be done. It can't be
Yeah,
done.
they'll just dodge them,
Yeah.
or whatever. So was your wife jealous of her?
No, that is an excellent point.
Well, I was asking that
No,
just
no,
for a
you're-
joke, but
That's right, because the FBI has a lot of rules. One of them is
hilarious.
that you never contact a female informant by yourself. Okay? And I found out why very early. I had a female informant who called and said she had some information about a man we were after. Now, it was Friday night, and my plan was for my wife and I to go out to dinner. But this was a guy that we really wanted. So I called my partner and said, Jim, I need some help. So-and-so called, and she's got a line on Debbie Barbo was the guy's name. And Jim said, all right. So Jim and I went to see this lady, and let's just say that this, the door is here. So I knocked on the door. Jim was standing over there. She opens the door. She's a very attractive woman. And she was wearing a negligee. I still think about it. I mean, she was absolutely gorgeous. She opens the door and says, exposing her right breast, "Oh, Tom, I'm so glad to see you." Now, the problem was, for her, when she made that turn, she saw Jim. And I wish I'd been able to record the expression on her face. Okay. So Jim and I went into the apartment, and in the closet was her boyfriend with a camera. Not good. Now, you can imagine what she had in mind. And if Jim had not been there, in all honesty, I'm not so sure I would be here, right now. So we always contacted informants, female informants, with you guys.
That question was so worth it.
Yeah, sure.
Is that only for male agents?
Good question.
And is it vice versa for the...
Is that only for male agents? Now, lady, I must apologize that the FBI did not hire a female agent until July 1st of 1972.
Yeah, I get that. Back then, there's still that gender equality issue thing problem.
No, it wasn't equality. It was J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover died May the 2nd, 1972.
No?
He had been our director for 46 years. And he knew Washington, D.C. politics. He was a good director for us. He kept us above politics, but he ruled with an iron hand.
You mean this?
Well, if you can imagine, for 46 years, now he was not married, 46 years someone tells you, you are absolutely right, I wish I thought about that. Nobody ever told him he was wrong. So you hear that for 46 years, and what do you start believing?
That you're totally invincible and nobody ever question your authority for whatever reason be.
And on and on and on. You are invincible, you are brilliant.
But
So when,
he's perfect, isn't it?
you know, he thought he
Eventually some guy with better idea will just come here and just tell him, hey, there's something wrong with your idea here.
Well, with Hoover,
Eventually that's gonna happen.
I never met him because I was told he didn't like psychologists, social workers, or sociologists.
Wow.
And I was told that if I had a chance to meet him, I should introduce myself as a criminologist.
Good idea.
Okay, and I knew enough about criminology anyhow, but I never met him. So, okay, just, oops, I pushed the right button. Let me, because of my background in mental health, we got involved in psychological profiling. I'll tell you immediately that a psychological profile does not solve a case. What it does is it narrows the focus of the investigation so that you have a better idea of who you are looking for. Now, the example I'm going to use, I'll have to ask Gilbert, deals with serial killers, because we have a lot of them in the United States. Here you have...
Actually, I've done a project at the FBI National Academy. In the history of Hong Kong, I think there's only like a couple of very small cases of serial killer. The one that I recall is Lam Go. Okay, I think it's about 40 or 50 years ago. So that's the really principal serial killer here in Hong Kong. Yeah, it's not many.
So it doesn't happen,
Wait,
fortunately,
who's
very
Lam Go?
often
Lam Go.
Who?
in Hong Kong.
No idea.
Yeah, he wasn't born at the time.
Was he the is he the Hong Kong equivalent of the Italian mafia?
No. The taxi driver. The taxi driver.
Oh, no idea.
Okay, so just to make the difference very clear, Richard Trenton Chase was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. The Sacramento Police Department was called because a neighbor reported some shooting. Officer drives up, he sees two people in the driveway who are dead, a grocery bag on the lawn that's open. Crime scene is conducted, the people are taken to the morgue, and there the coroner says, these people are missing 3 pints of blood. Was there a lot of blood at the crime scene? And the officer said, well, no, there was blood, but not a lot of it. But they went back and double checked to make sure it hadn't soaked into the ground. So now we're wondering, what? People missing a lot of blood, it's not at the crime scene. Then about 3 days later, another homicide. People are shot. This time, the woman is in her kitchen. Grocery bag, torn open. And I'm sure the same thing is, when you buy groceries, you get a receipt. And so the police looked at the receipt and looked at the groceries, and they said, wait a minute, there are a number of items that are missing. And they noticed the same thing happened with the previous homicide. And this woman was also missing at least 2 pints of blood.
Like
Not
We need like two like pipes.
pints, P-I-N-T-S.
Is that what?
Liters is equivalent to like liter.
Yeah, do you understand? What, each of us has what, 5 pints of blood in our body? And somebody took 2 or 3 of hers.
Is he a
Okay,
vampire?
so then they call the FBI. And we come out and say, okay, you've got somebody here who is obviously a serial killer. He's got something about blood and food. Based on our experience, we can tell you that because of the physical activity and the fact that the victims are white, you're looking for a white male in his 20s who, because the first homicide occurred in June, was hospitalized in a mental hospital probably up until April. I'll get to you in just a second. So that, again, that narrows the investigation. And we tell the officers that typically this person lives within a quarter of a mile of a crime scene because he walks to the crime scene. He tends not to drive. So they begin going door to door, asking people, has anybody moved into this neighborhood recently? You know, white male, lives alone. You see him walking around a lot, etc. And, you know, most people say no. But get to an apartment building, and one woman says, well, yes, there's a man downstairs. I've said hello to him several times, and he just kind of ignores me. He lives alone, and he moved in here sometime during the spring. So, okay, the officer then goes to the manager of the apartment building, who says, oh yeah, you're talking about Mr. Chase, and I know he was in a mental hospital because a social worker, you know, a follow-up, has come by and asked me if everything was okay, and yes, he's a very quiet man, doesn't bother anybody. But now we have a pretty good suspect. So a surveillance is initiated on him. And one night, the officer sees him take we'll just say a small container from his house, go to the garbage can in the back, put it in there, and go back to his house. But under American law, once you put something in a public garbage can, we, law enforcement, do not need a search warrant because you've abandoned that property. And I'm sure the law here is pretty okay. So they open the garbage can, and the officer doesn't recognize a kidney or a heart, but he sees something that, you know, not usual garbage. And it's verified that it's not only a kidney, but it belongs to one of the victims. So Richard Trenton Chase is arrested. I was on my way to interview him, but he hanged himself in jail, so I never had a chance to talk to him.
So what was that? So what was the stuff missing from that grocery bag? Is it meat and organs
Good question. What was missing from the grocery bag was food.
or tomatoes?
And what we found, as I said, I didn't interview him, but the police who interviewed him said he had a delusion that they were trying to poison him. So to get away from them and their poisoned food, he was stealing food from other people. And why he chose to drink blood, I don't know. But that was the whole issue of the of the food.
Do you still garlic?
I don't know if he's garlic or not.
Vampires hate garlic. You wouldn't have touched it.
No, well, the whole vampire issue was just the blood, and it was a newspaper version. On the other hand, The antisocial personality is very gregarious, a friend for everybody, at least in terms of if you can do something for him, he'll be your friend. And the Green River killer, Gary Leon Ridgway, killed about 50 females before he was caught. One of the big differences here is the paranoid schizophrenic does not consider that he's committing a crime. So we have physical evidence. We have fingerprints left behind and things of that sort. This fellow he knows that he's killing someone. And so he's very careful in trying to collect evidence. And one of the reasons that he dumped them in the Green River is very near the Seattle-Tacoma airport, is the water would wash off a lot of evidence. Okay, we got involved. I got a voice standing. We got involved in the case, the FBI did, because we were called by the Seattle Police Department saying we need help. Now, one of the jobs of the FBI is to assist local law enforcement, both in training and with any cases, because otherwise we are limited to federal violations, and homicide is not a federal violation unless the person is killed in a federal building or on a military reservation. So we're very restricted in terms of our jurisdiction. But helping local police, absolutely. So we went out and asked them to say, okay, how many of these prostitute homicides do you have? Bless you. And they said, 15. And John Douglas, the man who, in the FBI, who was the lead on this case, said, I can tell you this, you have already interviewed the killer. But for whatever reason, you decided it wasn't him. So don't bother looking for more people. Go back to the people you have already spoken with. Now that's a lot of help for a police department in terms of use of their personnel. Now not everyone believed him, but enough people believed him. They began looking at the files. And then John said, you're looking at a gregarious guy, lives in the area, but probably drives. And again, most of the victims were white, and personal crimes in the United States tend not to cross racial lines. Is it 100%? No. But typically they don't. So most of the victims are white. He's probably white. He's been seen in this area because this is where the prostitutes operated. Well, long story short, on one of the earlier investigations, they had collected some DNA. And then between that investigation and John telling them that they had already identified the guy, DNA capability, expertise had been perfected enough so that they were able to make some comparisons. And up came Mr. Ridgway. Now, he made a deal with the Department of Corrections in the state of Washington that in exchange for the death penalty, not being executed, he would tell them where the bodies were, or where he at least dumped them. And if you go to Google and type in that name, Gary Leon Ridgway, you'll come up with page after page after page of his confession in great detail. What interested me in all this profiling was back before I joined the FBI, My first field placement as an MSW student was as a parole agent. Now, in the United States, and again, you said parole is not common here. If you're, let's say you commit some burglaries and you're sentenced to 7 years in prison. If you're a good inmate, you can be paroled, let's say after 4 years, and then for 3 years, 3 more years, you must report to a parole agent once a week, once a month, whatever the conditions of your parole are. I had one parolee, Herman Gaylord Allison, who I will never forget because he was a jerk. He was also antisocial. And antisocial people use a lot of projection, and I'll mention more projection later. But you know, projection, you made me do it. Quick example. He wanted to go over to the coast of California to visit his girlfriend. So I was his parole agent, and I said, okay, you come back here this afternoon. This was a Tuesday, whatever it was. I want to see a round-trip bus ticket. I want to see a bus schedule. I want her name, the address, you know, and again, structuring this as much as possible. Well, he came back that afternoon, and he had his round-trip bus ticket and the bus schedule, and et cetera, et cetera. I said, all right, according to this, you're going to be back here on Tuesday. You're leaving Thursday, you're coming back on Tuesday. The bus gets into Fresno. Fresno is a town in Central California, inland, at whatever, 2 o'clock. I want you in this office by 2:30. Otherwise, he violates a condition of his parole, and he goes back to prison.
And he decided to.
Well, no, that's so. What happens is he left on Thursday. Thursday night, Friday morning, somewhere in there, I get a phone call from the sheriff's department halfway between Fresno and Monterey. And the man says, is this Tom Strentz? I said, yeah, this is Tom. This is Deputy, Joe Jones, Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Department. Do you know Herman Gaylord Allison? Oh my God.
I knew he's too good to keep his promise.
What did we do now? He said, you're not going to believe this. I said, oh yes, I'll believe it. He stole a road grader, does that, it's a big machine about as long as this room that has a blade in the center to move dirt. Okay, it's a road grader. On the side of the road grader, it says County of Fresno. He stole the Fresno County road grader. He stole the road grader? Yeah.
Wait.
He
Is he used for building roads with it?
I'll get that. He said the interesting thing is that as long as he was in Fresno County, nobody called the police. But after he got to another county, they called the police and said, hey, this is kind of strange. It's after 5 o'clock when most people are off work. And this guy just drove past my house in a Fresno County road grader. And, this is Kern County. Okay, so the sheriff's department goes out and talks to him and looks around. They can't find him, but then they alert the other counties, and he's arrested in Santa Cruz County.
That vehicle must be really, really slow.
Well, he drives slow, but it takes a while for the police to get there. But long story short, they extradite him to Fresno County. I go over and see him, and the first words out of his mouth, it's all your fault. Oh, why is it my fault? You told me I had to be in Santa Cruz at whatever time the bus arrived. I said, okay. He said, well, he said, I got to the bus depot but the bus left early. No.
And not excuses.
Buses don't leave early. You know, occasionally they leave late, but they don't leave early. I said, oh, okay, so the bus left early. And again, active listening, just repeating the last couple of words. Yeah, the bus left early. And again, tolerating silence. And he said, I knew because you told me that I had to be in Monterey, so I tried hitchhiking, nobody would pick me up. And you told me I had to be there, so I just borrowed the road grader. In fact, I put some fuel in it. Oh, nice guy, huh?
You might as well just.
Oh, okay, so he ends up, you know, I violated him and what have you, but in his mind, it wasn't his fault. It was my fault. And I'll get another example of that in just a moment, but our daughter, God bless her, loves the name Allison and asks me, Daddy, Daddy, give me a break. She's 43 years old now. But she said, Dad, you know, how come you didn't name me Allison? And I said, Stacy, and I told her the story. She said, all right, that's fine with me. Yeah, yes.
She actually sent him back to prison.
Yeah, for stealing the road grader. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and I see when they're on parole.
You had it coming.
When they're on parole, there's no trial, there's no hearing. We go before a judge, and I said, Your Honor, a condition of his parole is he can't steal. Well, obviously. And he stole a road grader. And it just, he stole the what? Yeah, and he went back to prison. This alphabetical order thing is very crucial in, sure.
You violated your parole and he committed a second offense. Would the second offense of stealing a road grader be added on top of his?
Yeah, oh yeah, good question. Yeah, and that's, again, my concern as a parole agent is he violated parole, stole a road grader, he goes back to prison. And then the decision is made at some level whether or not they're going to add that time to his sentence. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Now, if he had killed somebody, oh, absolutely, you know, they would add that time.
do you get a second chance for parole or like he's done? Like he had to play?
Yeah, good question. Does he get a second chance at parole? Probably not. He's going to finish that sentence, you know, in prison. We interviewed, you know, we did research on serial killers. We go out and talk to them in prison. And we had their names in alphabetical order because we're the FBI and we're very organized. And we've been interviewing people. And then the man on top, Berkowitz, killed a number of people in New York City. And without getting into all the details of the crime, the point is that he was serving life. We had done a profile that was pretty accurate. We always followed up. Once the police would arrest somebody, we'd go out and talk to the police to find out where our profile was right, where it was wrong, and then we would interview the individual. So this was the interview phase. And to try to impress the guy with how important he was, we would show him the list of the people that we were interviewing. And when we got to Berkowitz, he looked at that list and he said, well, I see you have my name at the top of the list where it belongs. My partner and I looked at each other and said, oh my God, have we been messing up? Because he was at the top of the list because it was alphabetical order, not because he was the most important guy there. But after that, no matter who we interviewed, top of the list. Because we're playing to their ego. And we use their ego against them. Okay? We use their ego against them. And this was just one of the many ways that we did that. There's also Wayne Williams. Wayne Williams was a serial killer in Georgia. He was a black man killing black boys. And the newspapers got a hold of the fact that we were getting evidence from the bodies, hairs and fibers from the bodies. So then he began dumping bodies in water. Okay, we didn't get as much evidence, but that told us that, like most serial killers, he's following his case in the papers. So we set him up. We set him up. We did not have enough police officers and FBI agents to stake out every bridge in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta is a very big town, hundreds, if not thousands, of bridges. So at a conference where we invited the public, because the public wanted to know what's going on with this case, we knew that Williams would show up to find out just what was going on. There were a number of police officers at the front table, and one of them, a local sheriff, a great guy, okay, but he's also a good actor. Because we said, we went over all this with him, that at one point, what you're going to say is, well, let me tell you, he ain't going to drop no bodies in my county, because he does that, we're going to catch him. Now, to the antisocial personality, that's like waving a red flag at a bull. Because we had enough people to stake out the bridges in, quote, his county, unquote. And sure enough, within a week, next body off a bridge in his county. Now the police stop, they hear the splash, they stop his car, they identify him, but they can't find the body. And that isn't enough evidence to arrest him, but we've got his name, his license number, and they make damn sure that they got the right name, for this guy. And then about 3 days later, it had just rained and there was a pretty swift current in the river. They find the body. So we went back, not we, the Atlanta police went back and arrested him. And he was tried and convicted and is still in prison for about a dozen homicides. But again, we were playing to their ego. Now the other thing with Wayne Williams was they are very good actors. And I'm not saying that everybody who's an actor is an antisocial personality or a serial killer, okay? But they know how to communicate very, very effectively. And so during the trial, he was putting on his I am just so perfect demeanor that we were getting concerned about the jury. But pull his chain, does that aggravate him? We knew how to aggravate him. So we gave some questions to the district attorney. And one of them, which wasn't, we knew it wasn't true. Okay. He said, "Oh, Mr. Williams, with all these boys you allegedly killed, isn't it true that you had sex with all of them?" "Oh, I didn't have sex with all of them." And he jumped up and he goes, and the jury, "Oh my God, this guy's a monster." And there were other things we did to aggravate him.
He's really bad at keeping his cool down.
That was the key with him, so the jury could see what kind of individual we were dealing with. Okay, I got enough time for this. I was called upon to take a look at aircraft hijacking because it's a jurisdiction of the FBI. Now, today we don't have any hijackings, but in the late 1960s and early 70s, we were having almost a hijacking a week of a commercial aircraft.
You mean against those terrorist guys?
No terrorists. Apparently schizophrenics for the most part.
Okay.
Because we didn't have the magnetometers. And so we began looking at how are we going to stop these people? And what we did is we looked at the hijackers, most of them were caught, and what we found is, again, common sense, but you gotta go out and do the research to find the common sense. When they bought their ticket, they bought a one-way ticket because they weren't coming back. Number two, they paid cash. Number three, no check bags. Because they're not going to be at the back, to collect their bags, so they're going to go someplace else. Now, again, that doesn't solve or prevent hijackings, but it allows people at the airport to, again, it narrows the focus. How many people today or any time get on an airplane, pay cash, one-way ticket, no check bags? Not too many, okay? So that takes the 100, 200 people, whatever, on a plane, and narrows it down to folks that, okay, this guy paid cash, one-way ticket. What's your name? Where are you going? And then we find out he's in the military, and he doesn't have any checked bags because he's being transferred or whatever. So okay, then he gets on the plane. But that was the beginning of profiling with the airlines, and our hijackings went down to almost nothing. And then, of course, we have the magnetometers and all the other things. But again and again, it comes back to who's committing these crimes, how are they different from everybody else, in this case, on the aircraft. The FBI got involved in hijackings, and in my case, the Special Operations Unit, because we were sued. Now, in the United States, we're always suing each other for something. And it's not new, it's been going on since 17 whatever. I had a history professor say that one reason we have such a good constitution is we had a lot of attorneys back in the 1700s who were busy suing each other. And when it came to writing a constitution, of course we stole the British Constitution and just made a few changes here and there. But because of this lawsuit, we got into hostage negotiations. Because what happened in this particular case, Downs versus the USA, of 1970, actually that date is wrong, it was 1971. 1971, it was settled in 73. I'm going to have to correct that slide. And that's important because 1971 I was not at Quantico. By 1973 I was. We got the call to develop a negotiations program. And it came to behavioral science. If you saw the movie Silence of the Lambs, did that play here?
Yep.
Okay, that was my unit. And if you remember enough about that movie, how the whole focus of the investigation changed when they found out that the first body they found was not the first person he killed. The first person he killed, her body was found much later. Because in profiling, we knew that the first body is the crime scene where there's the most evidence, and it's closest to the killer's area of comfort, whether it's his home or work or school. But anyhow, I went out and began interviewing police and FBI agents who had negotiated successfully and unsuccessfully to find out what works. And I drew almost exclusively on what I had learned as a social work student about interviewing, about active listening, drawing people out so they're comfortable talking to me. And I put together the FBI hostage negotiations program that is still being used today. And it's not because I'm that smart, okay? It's because I was well taught and I saw the connection, and I saw the value of active listening. What we also found is this particular pattern is necessary for crisis management. Now, if you can imagine, I know most of you haven't been sued or been to court, but in court we have a judge, and the judge makes sure that the attorneys for the plaintiff and the attorneys for the defendant both play by the rules, and he, entertains objections and what have you. I'm saying he, and of course there are female judges. And that works in court. It also works during a crisis. We have got to have, for our judge, we have the on-scene commander. For the plaintiff, we have the negotiating team. For the defendant, we have the tactical team. They both want to do something. Sometimes negotiators want to do one thing, tactical team wants to do another. The judge makes the decision. Or the on-scene commander, in this case, makes the decision. Now, what's going to happen in court, to get back to that model, if the judge is also the attorney for the defendant? It ain't going to work. I mean, justice is not going to be served. And when you start looking at crises that were mismanaged, that's exactly what happened. In the FBI case, the on-scene commander was also the negotiator, and he was in charge of the tactical team. There was no checks and balances. And the details of the case are frankly quite embarrassing, because it was a private aircraft, ended up in Jacksonville, Florida. The defendant, by the name of Giff, had his estranged wife on board as a hostage whom he had kidnapped. He refused to negotiate. The on-scene commander ordered one agent to shoot and kill Giff. The round bounced off the windshield of the aircraft. But when one agent shot, what did everybody else do? They all shot. That plane was so riddled with bullets that it could never fly again.
How do you shower that much bullets on the aircraft in such a short time?
Because we had 85 agents around the plane.
And they all carrying pistols?
Of course.
Right. Plane.
So, and
plane,
to make matters worse, some guys missed the airplane, and the rounds went into gasoline storage tanks and fortunately didn't penetrate the tanks. It was a disaster. We were sued, we lost, we got a negotiation suit. If you want to read more about the sad history of the FBI, again, go to Google, Downs versus USA. But the point, again and again, is we do the research to see what's going on. So typically the hijackings, we had 2 or 3 terrorists, about 4 criminals, but they found out pretty quickly that there's no money in hijacking airplanes. There's a bullet for you, but no money. Most of our hijackings were people suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. And what we found with all of our interviews of hostage takers, they see themselves as the victim. Okay? I'm not the bad guy, I'm the victim. I had to do this to bring attention to this, that, or something else. So you've got to shift gears when you're talking to a guy that, I don't mean to suggest you're a criminal, okay? How about that? You're talking to a guy, you're talking to a guy who, he's a criminal, he's hijacked an airplane. No, his mind, it's not his fault. Not his fault. I had a bank robber. Robbed a bank. As he was running out of the bank, the police showed up. He ran back in the bank, took people hostage. Okay, the police surrounded the bank, they called us, we showed up, began negotiating. And again, active listening. My name is Tom Strentz, I'm with the FBI. Can you tell me what's going on in there? Yeah, the damn police. It's their fault. It's their fault? And then, wasting. Yeah, it's their fault. Oh, it's their fault, huh? Again, active listening skills. And then finally I said, why is it their fault? Hey, well, I came here to rob the bank. Okay. And I was leaving with the money. This is great, we're getting this confession, on tape. I was leaving with the money. I saw the police car, and I knew they were going to kill me, so I had to run back inside. Oh, you ran back inside? Yeah, and then, all you guys showed up. No. So he went over this a couple times, and finally he said, will you explain this to the judge? And I said, okay, what do you want me to explain to the judge? Well, tell the judge it's not my fault. Okay, I'll tell the judge that you told me that it's not your fault. He says, yeah. Oh, beautiful. So he comes out, and again, okay, he believes that. You put him on a polygraph. Is it your fault you robbed that bank? No. Is it the police department's fault? Yes. No deception, because he believes it. So in Washington, D.C., whenever the FBI made an arrest, we went before a magistrate who's a kind of a judge who makes sure we have probable cause, meaning reason to arrest this guy. So the facts of the case are laid out, and the magistrate looks over at me and he says, do you have anything to say? Because he knew what the plan was. And I said, yes, Your Honor. Mr. Jones told me that in his mind it was not his fault, that he only came to rob the bank, and the police forced him back in. And I look over at Mr. Jones, and he's smiling. Yeah. The judge says, all right, Mr. Jones, do you have anything to say? No, and he didn't get my name right. I don't know what he called me, but he said, yeah, the FBI, that's exactly what happened. Oh, guilty. And off you went, tried, convicted, what have you. But the key is that negotiators must remember that this guy, and I'm saying guy, and ladies, we do have female hostage takers, and they're as mean as the male hostage takers, and sometimes as crazy as the male hostage takers. But the same thing applies, across the board. And typically, our bank robberies and our kidnappings and many hostage takings, that's ASP, antisocial personality. The reason I like ASP as a designation, in America, all of us study Shakespeare. And when Shakespeare's with Julius Caesar, that particular play, any of you familiar with? Oh, how about Cleopatra? You know who Cleopatra is? You know how Cleopatra died? She was bitten by a snake. She was bitten by an asp, A-S-P. And I think, I don't like snakes, okay? And then to me, that's one way I can always remember this antisocial personality, because they are pretty mean individuals, habitual criminals. As I tell my students, the only good thing you can say about the person with an antisocial personality is they represent job security for police, for courts, and for the prisons. Okay? And beyond that, I'm not so sure what value they serve. I've already mentioned the projection and the rationalization. Everybody does it. You're certainly familiar with that. And again, the key here is you play into that in the course of negotiations and interviewing the guy. And that's one part of profiling that gets very little press because we don't want it to get a lot of publicity. But we know how to get the truth out of these individuals. So we use their defense mechanisms against them. We listen, and as we listen as negotiators, what we call the hook. What can we use to put a hook around it? Again, sorry about that. Put a hook around this guy and drag him out.
So you mean like some kind of a chink in the armor that you could...
Okay, a chink in the armor, the Achilles heel, again,
Like a weak point.
using himself, using it against him is what we're able to do. And with a person with, a paranoid person, paranoid people don't trust anybody. And so when you get that kind of a person as a hostage taker, you can fatigue them pretty quickly with all sorts of decisions. And we had a major situation in Washington, D.C., where a paranoid fellow and his followers took over 3 buildings. They took over the mosque, they took over Washington, D.C. City Hall, and B'nai B'rith. B'nai B'rith is a Jewish service organization. So they had the Muslims in one location, the Christians in another, and the Jews in a third. And we immediately thought we got some kind of satanic cult here. Well, it wasn't that at all. This fellow took these folks hostage. He was delusional. He had paranoia. The tactical team was able to get into 2 of the 3 buildings. The third one, B'nai B'rith, he controlled the 8th floor, controlled the elevators. All the stairways were filled with furniture, and periodically they would dump gasoline down the stairways. So any sort of tactical move just couldn't be done. The only way in would be to blow a hole in the roof, and that would kill some of these 115 hostages. So what we did, with the assistance of the United States Navy, we used sleep deprivation. When he would go to sleep, we'd say, "Oh, good night, Mr. Calise, we'll talk to you later." Then we'd look over, now you're going to be a good guy, okay? We'd look over at our United States Navy psychologist, Lieutenant Commander Doug Deere, and Doug would note the time, and I'm just making these times up because I've forgotten them, and 2 hours and 20 minutes later, we would call. "Excuse me, Mr. Calise, we hate to bother you, but tomorrow morning, was it 15 cheeseburgers and 14 hamburgers, or was it 14 hamburgers and 15 cheeseburgers?"
So you're trying to make him not sleep by annoying him.
Well, okay, I'm getting to that. So he would correct us because we would always get it wrong. "Oh, thank you very much. And then he'd go back to sleep. We'd look back to, Doug Deere again, and again, I'm making up these times. Okay, the second time is 3 hours, and then the fourth time is an hour and a half. By the following morning, he was exhausted. So then, again, playing into his paranoid personality, we arranged a surrender scenario that would have rivaled the end of World War II on the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. We had people in uniforms and flags and drummers and whatnot, because that's what we needed to get these 100+ people out. And so again, taking what we knew of psychology, learning social work, applied it to the scene. In fact, I've already covered those 2. Social work, again, we begin where the client is. We have to give them the opportunity to do what they want to do, and sometimes it's failed. And failure as a hostage taker often means they get shot and they are killed. but I don't have time for this, and I appreciate you being available, but we don't have time for it. I have a tape where this guy tells us that if he is not allowed to leave with his female hostage, he's going to kill. He calls her the girl. Now, he knew her name was Anita, but he dehumanized her by the girl or that bitch or some other negative terms. We knew who he was. His parole agent said, if you let him go with her, he will kill her. He has a history of abusing women. Then he used an excellent analogy. He said, you know, when you go to the theater, you buy a ticket, and then you get into the theater, you give the ticket to the ticket taker. He tears it in half. Did that happen here?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. and so you're in the show. What do you do with that stub? Throw it away. I mean, it doesn't no longer any value. Do you cry because you threw it away? No, because you don't need it. So his parole agent said he will discard Anita, in other words, kill her, with as much emotion as you throw away a used theater ticket. Okay, that's the decision. So now we're going to have to kill him. We as negotiators set him up to come to a window and look at a car to make sure the money is in there. And when the sniper sees him at the window, bang, bang, 2 shots, one to break the glass, the other to kill him. Didn't want to do it, but what choice did we have? Can't let him go with Anita, because he'll kill her. And fortunately, I can't give you an exact percentage, but the majority of hostage takers surrender. But occasionally, we have to go tactical. And quite frankly, and I'll say this next week, as a negotiator, I must negotiate from a position of strength. And that position of strength is the tactical team. That either you deal with me or you deal with them. And it's 2 o'clock,
Yes, 2 o'clock.
so,
Please give them some time to ask you questions.
yeah.
I'm
Okay,
sure
let
they
me
have.
just get a quick sip. Go ahead.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Strentz? I'm sure you have some.
Yeah.
Sure.
When you said 2 shots, I was wondering like where does the first shot go? Like
Well,
I think the first shot was meant to break the window, just
Yeah.
where'd you aim for it?
but we aim. I'm not a sniper, and in all honesty, I can't answer that question. I could tell you something that you'd believe, but it's just to break the glass.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And that decision is made based on the size window, and somebody says, okay, a window like that, you've got to shoot. You've got to shoot here. And what? Anyhow,
Yeah.
It's usually chest tip. It's a 2-shot method.
yes.
To this question.
With the usual 2 shots, first shot break the glass, second shot
And then
into him.
one of them is aimed at the chest, and one of them aimed at the window.
I'm sorry, what?
One of the shots are usually meant to aim the chest, and the second usually the head.